I want to start by talking about Barack Obama, your former student and research assistant. Is that what you called him?
That's what he was. He was great.
We're all still trying to understand him, and people are starting to evaluate his presidency. What about the way he's conducted himself as president has surprised you, given the younger man you knew?
You know, it's been enough years, and he was sufficiently brilliant and in a sufficiently limited role that I could never have predicted what kind of president he would be. I certainly knew he would be something important and remarkable, but what kind of judgment he would show, how controlling he might be, what sorts of people he would surround himself with, those were things I couldn't have pretended to know. I obviously had enormous hopes for him, and when he was elected, I thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread. He's been impressive in some respects, perhaps disappointing in others. It's hard to say.
I've heard you use that expression with our friend Charlie Rose in an interview, disappointing in others. Enumerate the ones that have been disappointing.
Well, I thought that he would be more effective in achieving the goals that he had in terms of civil liberties, closing Guantanamo, ending some of the surveillance abuses that he had complained about earlier. I think maybe he discovered when he became president that it was a little harder than it seemed, and so it's not unexpected that nothing that happened would have followed the precise trajectory he had in mind. But I obviously had aspirations and hopes. I think also I believed, perhaps naively, you know, that being the first African-American president, he would be able to bridge the gap between the races, at least to some extent. I never thought that our deep racial divide would be cured by the elixir of having a black president, but I would not have expected, if somebody had asked me, would racial relations be worse now than they were when he became president? I wouldn't have expected that, and yet they do seem to be, if not worse, at least no better. So I'm disappointed in those respects. It's not so much that he didn't have the ability, it's that the problems were even more massive than I could have expected.
You taught both President Obama and Chief Justice Roberts. I know you don't know Chief Justice Roberts nearly as well as you know President Obama.
Right.
I'm interested in their comparing and contrasting their temperaments. You've talked about how President Obama might have been better suited to being a Supreme Court justice than maybe being president temperamentally. Many people say that Chief Justice Roberts is a very political Chief Justice. So just talk about a little bit about the temperaments of those two guys and the roles in which they found themselves.
Well, it's certainly true that Barack Obama is an extraordinarily thoughtful and careful person. He weighs and measures the pros and cons of everything almost endlessly. And in a way, although he's decisive when he finally comes down one way or another, he's an ideal judge. I mean, he listens, absorbs things, does not have deeply embedded preconceptions. He's not particularly ideological. I think in many ways John Roberts is more ideological, more committed to certain ways of looking at the world. I don't think he's simply a politician in robes. I think that's a mistake. But on the other hand, he has a very clear and crisp worldview, and he's very determined about seeing the world through the lenses that he has ground for himself. And I think in many ways it is a paradox that the more political of the two is John Roberts. He certainly is also the more sort of sociable. I mean, there's nothing unfriendly about Barack Obama when you get to know him, but I don't think he is as deeply engaged in sort of backslapping and making friends, whereas it was very clear when he was a brilliant student of mine that John Roberts would offend no one. He was liked by everybody. He was a person who spent time with everyone. He made allies across the ideological spectrum. How deliberate that was, I can't say because I didn't get to know him as well, but he was certainly an effective politician.
I want to ask you about an upcoming Supreme Court case that they've accepted where John Roberts will be at the center of things. King versus Burwell, the second big test for the Affordable Care Act. How endangered do you think the Affordable Care Act is, and how do you think Justice Roberts will approach this?
When the Chief Justice said that holding a gun to a state's head and saying your money or your life is a coercive proposition, whether you've got $1 in your pocket or $500 in your pocket, he was almost writing the script for an opinion that would say that we should interpret this to avoid pressuring the states by making them hold their citizens hostage.
So you've given him some ways to vote with the majority of Breyer, et cetera, but you wouldn't be surprised, would you, if he voted the other way?
I wouldn't be surprised either way. I think that's what makes it a hard question for him.
And that is cataclysmic of impact on the law, right?
I think it would be quite cataclysmic. I mean, it's not necessarily the meltdown of all of the Affordable Care Act, but it's close. And certainly 4 of the justices, I believe, would like to see him do that. They felt betrayed when he found a way to uphold the individual purchase mandate based on the taxing power. Some people believe that he would like to get back in their good graces. I think that his calculus is a lot more subtle than that. He cares about the long run. He cares about history. He cares about the meaning of the law. That's why I think that when he originally voted, as I predicted he would, both before and after the oral argument, to uphold the Affordable Care Act based on the taxing power, I don't think he was just trying to avoid doing something cataclysmic at that point. I think he was doing something that he thought was principled and that also would protect the institution. And so I think he is going to be pulled in 2 very different directions here, and I'm not a betting man. I'm not about to bet how he would go.
Was Ted Cruz your student?
He was. I'm told by his fellow students that he always bragged that he would get the 1A+ in my course.
But you have no recollection of that?
He didn't brag it to me.
Do you give A+?
I did in those days, and he got an A, a very solid A, but not an A+.
And do you remember him at all?
I remember him, sure. He talked all the time in class. Every time I opened my mouth, he would have an interesting counterpoint. I love that. I mean, I love the direct exchange. He was a little less bombastic in those days, but he was certainly smart. I didn't give a lot of A's. Barack Obama got an A+. I didn't give a lot of
when
A's.
Barack Obama was at the law school, a lot of people said that guy someday is going to has a good chance to be president of the United States. What did people say about Ted Cruz?
I thought they said he has a good chance to be a very influential politician. And I guess that he is.
And does it surprise you that he has ended up exactly as far to the right as he has ended up, or was that easily discernible even then?
It was pretty clear that he was very, very far to the right, very conservative. I think with somebody like John Roberts, it was much less clear where his ideology tilted. He was obviously conservative, I think a little less so than some people think he is now. But I think even now, he is more moderate than some people give him credit for being.